Given the geopolitical situation of the last period, which is not exactly looking its best, a lot of our clients are asking us what's the best bank and the best place to hold money, and what are all the advantages of keeping it in that specific place. So I'm going to do a series of videos dedicated to the various countries where we work and to the banking institution within those countries, how they function, how they operate, and what kind of clients they actually want to work with. So you can understand whether you fit the profile for a given country or a given institution. Today we're talking about Switzerland. I think it's the primary destination where money is moving right now, and where, for various reasons, it's always moved over the years. Today, Switzerland is a place where money is no longer under the way it used to be. It's not hidden, it's not sitting in a numbered account or anything like that. It's simply in a safe location that accepts capital from many countries. So Switzerland can comfortably work, and most banking institutions in Switzerland are private banking focused, meaning they're oriented toward investing with money arriving from the UAE and the Middle East, where significant amounts of capital are currently shifting. Billions and billions are looking to move to Switzerland from the Emirates for reasons that I think all of you know very well, given the current geopolitical situation. People have realized that keeping money in a country in the Middle East is perhaps not the top strategy for asset protection, for obvious reasons, and so they've moved it to a country that is historically one of the safest in the world, which is Switzerland. I'm Matteo Maglia, Partnership Manager at GloboBanks, the banking introduction company for international entrepreneurs. So, how do Swiss banks work? Almost all of them are private banking institutions, with the exception of certain cantonal banks, which also offer standard current accounts or premium banking. The private banking institutions in Switzerland are extremely selective. This means that residency, a UAE residency, for instance, is viewed very poorly. You need to arrive through an introduction. Going in independently, they ask for deposits of 5 to 10 millions, and the due diligence process takes several months. With us, through a formal introduction, the due diligence typically takes around 30 days. No in-person meeting is required, and everything is done via video call remotely. A small note here, the due diligence is done very thoroughly. It's just that your specific files get prioritized ahead of others, even if your deposit is significantly lower. This means that if we introduce you to a Swiss institution with 100, 200, 300, 500, it's still viewed much more favorably, and your application gets taken seriously from day one. You could find yourself on a video call with the bank very quickly, talking through your situation and explaining what your needs are, because a video call is almost always required. In 99% of cases, the remaining 1% requires a physical visit. Without an introducer, it's exactly the opposite. If you go in independently, you almost always have to travel to Switzerland, stay for a few days, then return or send documents. There's a whole sequence of things you need to do in person because they apply very strict access policies. With us, the due diligence and KYC on the client is done thoroughly by the institution. It's just done much faster and with priority, even if the deposit is considerably lower. Now, Swiss banks, in the specific context, since that what we are talking about almost always apply significant fees because they're private banking institutions, and as such they want to earn on management, investments, and fees applied to wire transfers and account maintenance. They know the money is going to come to them. They don't need marketing. Swiss banks already have a long-standing reputation that continues to improve because you've seen what happened in the Middle East. Money moved. Where? Switzerland, Singapore, but mainly Switzerland because people feel safe there. Someone woke up one day feeling anxious, tense because their money was sitting in Qatar, Kuwait, or Dubai. They said, where do I move it? I move it into Switzerland as fast as I can. The problem is that the banks now have even more demand than before, and they're being even more selective. Rightly so, because if the diligence isn't done properly, they can end up with fines, client problems, and so on. So they're extremely careful. Don't think you can just go there to their website, call their number and open a bank account in 2 minutes. It doesn't work that way. They want in-person meetings and their right to, they want to protect their reputation, which today is very positive. Swiss banks have a positive image with governments around the world. Holding money in Switzerland is no longer considered a red flag. Nobody's going to look at you suspiciously for it. Today you're just being smart. Full stop. Swiss banks don't hide your money, they don't do anything unusual, they are not considered offshore banks, even if offshore technically just means outside your country of residence. They're viewed favorably by governments. And if tomorrow that bank needs to issue you a reference letter, which is very useful, I'll cover that in another video. That letter carries real weight. A Caribbean bank reference letter is a very different story. So, what are the fees and the things to know when you're dealing with a Swiss institution and want to move your capital there? First of all, the minimum deposits are always very high. Going in independently, as I mentioned, wealth management fee are also very high, typically 1.5% to 2%. Through us, they come down substantially. 1% can become 0.6%, less than half the standard fees. Account and maintenance fees, which typically run around 300 euros per month and are usually charged annually, so like more than 3,000 Swiss francs a year for high-level private banking institution. With us, zero. Fees on idle cash, removed. Lombard fees, and this is worth knowing if you're not familiar. The Lombard is a credit facility the bank provides. Normally you need at least 120,000 to 130,000 Swiss francs invested to request a Lombard. And the line typically comes in at around 85%, depending on the risk level of the underlying investment. It could be as low as 60% if the investment is very aggressive. But I'm talking here about fairly conservative investments, ETFs, blue chip equities, bonds, things in the range. With investments of the profile, you can typically get 80 to 85%. The average is 85% in liquid funds in exchange for having those money invested. So you get 85% of 120,000 francs in cash on your account, which the bank lends you, and you can use that in various ways. You could put those funds back into the institution as additional investment, so the bank doesn't see the money leaving, and then take a new Lombard on the increased position, which now includes the original 120k plus the new investment. Why 120 to 130k? Because that's roughly the minimum at which banks will actually release a Lombard. Below that, even with 100k invested, they usually won't. On Lombard fees, Swiss banks typically want to earn on these two. So rates in the 3.5 to 3.8% range are common, sometimes touching 4% through that rate. With us, depending on the currency you choose, if you go with euros or Swiss francs, for instance, we are talking rates from 1% up to about 2.5% to 2.7%, which is usually excellent, especially if investment return is 10% in a year. You repay the Lombard and you've kept a very healthy margin. The Lombard is also attractive because there is no repaying deadline. The important thing is that your client profile has been properly introduced and referenced, because if you go in independently, even depositing 2 million and opening an account today, then asking for a Lombard tomorrow, setting aside how difficult it now is to open a Swiss account on your own with a serious institution, you'll have a problem. In fact, let me be direct about this. If a Swiss institution opens an account for you independently with very little friction, look more carefully. Either they've done extremely rigorous due diligence or the account wasn't opened in Switzerland itself. They may have opened it at a branch outside Switzerland, or more likely, they didn't do proper due diligence, in which case you may face account restrictions later. Be careful if you have a residency that until recently was considered acceptable, like Monaco, for example, which until not long ago wasn't on any grey list, but now is, or the UAE. Even having a UAE residency and trying to open a Swiss account, however close geographically or however people assume the sets are, is going to be very difficult. A European Union residency is viewed more favorably, so it depends on the country. Some European countries are viewed better than others. UAE residency specifically is viewed very poorly by Swiss banks right now. Even through an introducer, you're talking about several hundred thousand in deposits. Going in alone, practically not an option. In that case, they want multiple in-person visits to Switzerland, an extremely thorough screening process because they're worried that funds may be connected to their conflicts or related activity. And the bank is right to investigate thoroughly. Personally, I want my money in an institution that has screened everyone properly. I want it somewhere with a reputation to protect, not in a bank that gets a fine every month, blocks funds they have no right to block, hides behind the procedural loopholes, pays the fine and carries on regardless. There are very large institutions that do exactly that. You can verify it independently. And I've talked about specific situation on this channel. It's not acceptable. They freeze your money for months after closing your account because something didn't look right to them. Something they should have investigated before accepting you. We select the institution very carefully for our clients. The banks we work with are small. Some have been established for 100, 200, 300 years ago. There is one Swiss institution we work with that has been operating since the 17th century. Going in independently, you'd get a 5 million deposit request without question. Through us, depending on residency, you can open a relationship from 250,000 because our clients are seen differently. So, if you want to be introduced to a banking institution and access excellent fees, real advantages, security and speed, click the link below in the description. The first link lets you speak with an expert member of our team who will assess your situation, tell you which institution makes the most sense, in which jurisdiction, and most importantly, whether you can access the specific advantages that we will know very well.